Senator Graham.
Mr. Zelikow, what's the recidivism rate regarding the people that have been released to Guantanamo Bay? Do you know?
There are no reliable statistics on the recidivism rate. What we do know is that some number of people who have been released have been encountered again on the battlefield. Numbers range dozens, perhaps, of people who have been released have been encountered again. And so, as with...
would that be a miscarriage of justice?
Not necessarily.
What if it were your son or daughter that was killed by one of these guys? How would you feel about it?
I'd feel the same way I would if a parole board had released someone from a prison and then that person committed a crime. That problem happens all over the country, and we're pretty familiar with it. And sometimes
is there a difference between KSM and a guy that robbed a liquor store?
I beg your pardon?
Is there a difference between KSM and a domestic criminal?
There sure is, sir. And I think
and the only reason I mentioned that, I generally agree with you. The only reason I mentioned that is we've got to understand there's two sides to this story. There's very much two sides to this story, and we need to move on and get it right. We need a facility somewhere. Senator Durbin's left. I do not take by his examination that he's volunteering Illinois as the housing site. And I'm not going to ask my friend from Rhode Island, would he take these people? Because if you're waiting for a member of Congress to stand up and say, bring them to my state, you're going to be waiting till hell freezes over. Because nobody is going to do that. But I do believe we need to close Guantanamo Bay. I do believe we can handle 100 or 250 prisoners and protect our national security interests, because we had 450,000 German and Japanese prisoners in the United States. So this idea that they cannot be housed somewhere safely, I disagree. But the decision to put them somewhere is very important. It needs to be well thought out. And the idea that you have to let these people go or try them, I completely disagree with that. Mr. Turner, how do you believe about that?
I was going to suggest a correction for the record. Senator Durbin was talking about somebody being held for years without being charged. As you well know,
that's not right.
The theory of a POW is he's being warehoused. He's not considered a wrongdoer. Now, if he's committed a war crime or murdered someone as a prisoner, you charge him and try him. But international law does not require that military combatants be charged to be detained. Indeed, you mentioned the 400,000+ mostly German POWs we had in more than 40 states during World War II. 2 or 3 of them got to courts briefly because they claimed American citizenship. They were quickly sent back. None of them got a day in court. They didn't get a lawyer. The theory of POWs is they're not wrongdoers. They're enemy soldiers who had the misfortune of falling into the hands of their enemy. You warehouse them and then you send them home. If they've committed crimes, you have the option of charging them and trying them, but you're not supposed to keep them in a civilian prison, and you're not supposed to try them in a civilian court.
That's exactly right. Now, the point that we're trying to make, Mr. Turner and myself, is that when a member of al-Qaeda is captured, all of them are not subject to war crime trials simply by their status. But if an independent judiciary agrees with the military and the CIA that the person is, in fact, the evidence supports the decision that you're a member of al-Qaeda, an enemy combating a military threat, there is no requirement under military law to let people go. Do you agree with that, Mr. Adcock?
Yeah, I mean, part of the premise here, if we're not using the law of war, we've done a lot of illegal stuff. If we're operating on the law of war, we're doing what we perfectly do in every war.
That's
in my opinion, closing down Gitmo is a mistake. It's a propaganda victory for our enemies, because we're saying to the world, we have something to apologize for. We're holding these people illegally. We're torturing them, which has never occurred at Gitmo. And that's the exact opposite message that we should be sending. We're in a state of war with these people. If you're trying to stop them at the airport, you're too late.
Right. I agree with that, but I agree with Mr. Zelikow that it is an image problem. See, this is why we need to move on. I mean, the moral high ground, Mr. Adcock, is the place to be. The only way we're going to persuade people on the fence to come our way is to show a difference between us and our enemy. Now, I don't want to treat these people with kid gloves, but I want to... Do you agree with this concept that once we capture an enemy combatant, it becomes about us, not them?
I think, if we detain that individual under the law of war, and that's an issue that we have not made...
But we will do things that they won't do to us, and that's good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
that's a good thing, that we will treat them better then they'll treat us.
Exactly. And that's why my testimony is the propaganda here is that we have tortured people is a lie. We
Well,
have
see,
tortured no one.
if I may just for a moment here, waterboarding at the time of 2002 was not clear what law it violated. The Geneva Convention did not apply until 2006.
That would depend what case you read.
Yeah, well, here's what I'm saying. The difference between law enforcement and intelligence gathering is a big difference. And what you would do to a military member, an MP, who abused a detainee would be a violation of the UCMJ. The CIA or the FBI, you're not controlled by the UCMJ, are you, Mr. Soufan?
No.
Was your interrogation Common Article 3 compliant?
Not after 9/11. We get instructions that we don't read people, for example, their Miranda rights. We don't follow with a lot of things that we used to do after 9/11 when it comes to...
I would say that there is no FBI interrogation of a high-value target Common Article 3 compliant. Simply because Common Article 3 was written to make sure that military forces do not abuse civilians. It was never written to restrict the ability of a nation to defend itself. And we have made a huge mistake here. We made two big mistakes. We adopted interrogation techniques from the Inquisition that have survived time because in some cases they do work, Mr. Soufan, but they always come back to bite you. So I will turn it over now to the chairman, and hopefully we'll find some way to move forward here.
Senator, may I comment on something that the other witnesses have said?
Very briefly.
Yeah. Okay. First, I don't agree that everybody in Guantanamo is an enemy combatant. We do know that there have been a number of people that the CSRTs have already cleared of being enemies of the United States.
I agree with that.
Still being held there. Second, I don't agree that people haven't been tortured in Guantanamo. I think that it's very clear that Mohammed al-Qahtani was. This is made, I think, perfectly clear in the Schmidt report. 4 of the tactics that were used on al-Qahtani later surfaced to worldwide consternation.
Should President Bush be prosecuted for authorizing these techniques?
Sir, I don't have any opinion about who should be prosecuted for what was done to al-Qahtani.
Well, I'd suggest that there are too many opinions on that going around. We've got prosecutors who look at that stuff professionally, and we should let them do their jobs.